Grab the clamp. No, the other one. Faster. The operating room spun into chaos, blood spurting, alarm shrieking. A young nurse stood in the corner, barely noticed, hair tied back in a simple bun. Suddenly, she lunged forward. Her hands moved faster than the senior residents, catching a vessel before it tore completely. The chief surgeon froze, staring at her in complete disbelief. Your reflexes, they aren't normal. Who taught you that? The room went silent. No one knew her past. Meet Lena Kovacs, 27 years old, brown hair, always pulled back, Hungarian-Austrian descent. She just started her internship at St. Haven Medical Center, one of the most prestigious hospitals on the East Coast. Small frame, kind face, always treated like just another surgical assistant. Nobody paid attention to her. The resident doctors would constantly order her around. Fetch the gauze. Don't stand too close to the table. This isn't your battlefield. Leave it to the surgeons. Lena never reacted. She just quietly observed every detail, every heartbeat of the patient, every small fluctuation on the monitors. During one particularly long surgery, a resident carelessly touched an unsterilized area. Lena quietly handed him a replacement instrument, right before he was about to be reprimanded. Nobody thanked her. One doctor even scoffed, lucky reflex, not skill. After the surgery, she walked home silently, an old canvas bag slung over her shoulder. Inside that bag was a worn brown leather notebook. But this wasn't ordinary note-taking. The notebook contained dozens of hand-drawn anatomical diagrams, with precise annotations written in the margins. Timing matters. 1 second is the border. Her handwriting was different from typical medical students. More urgent, more tactical. Each diagram was labeled with coordinates and measurements that seemed almost military in precision. Every evening, Lena would sit in her small apartment reviewing those diagrams. Her fingers would trace the pathways of major arteries. Her eyes would memorize the exact angles for emergency incisions. The other nurses thought she was just overly studious. They had no idea. During coffee breaks, conversations would flow around her. Did you see that new resident? So confident. I heard he graduated top of his class from Johns Hopkins. Lena's nice, but she's just quiet. Nothing special. She would nod politely and continue reading. But sometimes, when she thought nobody was looking, her fingers would unconsciously flex, as if gripping something heavier than a scalpel. The movements were precise, controlled, military. One afternoon, a code blue alarm went off. Cardiac arrest in the ER. Lena was restocking supplies when she heard it. For just a split second, her entire posture changed. Alert, ready, like a soldier hearing gunfire. Then she caught herself and resumed her normal, quiet demeanor. But Dr. Martinez noticed. He'd been watching her for weeks. Strange, he thought. That reaction wasn't normal for a nurse. Hidden in Lena's scrub's pocket was a dented silver coin, worn smooth around the edges. It was the only thing left from a battlefield she'd never spoken about. She would touch it whenever the hospital alarm sounded too much like artillery fire. Tuesday morning arrived with the screech of ambulance sirens. Multiple vehicle collision on Highway 9. 5 casualties rushed into the ER. One of them was a military officer with severe trauma. The trauma bay erupted into controlled chaos. We need all hands, this is bad. Blood everywhere. Monitors screaming, senior residents scrambling. The officer had a severed artery in his leg, femoral, the kind that kills you in minutes. Dr. Richards, a second-year resident, was trying to clamp it. His hands were shaking, blood kept spurting between his fingers. I can't get it. Move aside. Dr. Hayes, the chief surgeon, rushed over. But before he could reach the table, Lena appeared. One fluid motion. Her left hand stabilized the leg. Her right hand guided the clamp with surgical precision. Click. The bleeding stopped instantly. Complete silence in the trauma bay. Everyone stared. Doctor. Hayes looked at her with pure shock. Who taught you that? Lena stepped back, eyes downcast. Nobody, just observation. But as she walked to the sink to wash her hands, Dr. Martinez noticed something. Her palms had thick calluses between the fingers, not the kind you get from hospital work. And there was a long scar running from her wrist to her elbow, thin, clean, like it came from a blade or shrapnel. The rumors started immediately. She wasn't trained here. Those reflexes look more like combat medics than hospital nurses. Did you see how fast she moved? Dr. Peterson, a veteran who'd served in the Middle East, pulled Dr. Hayes aside. "Chief, I've seen those hands before. They don't belong to a regular nurse. They belong to someone who's patched up wounds under enemy fire." That evening, Dr. Hayes reviewed the security footage. He watched Lena's movement frame by frame. The way she approached the patient, the angle of her grip, the speed of her response. "This isn't textbook medicine," he muttered. "This is battlefield experience." He started digging into her background. Lena Kovacs, born in Budapest, moved to the U.S. at age 15, nursing degree from a community college in Ohio. But there was a gap, 3 years missing from her resume. From age 21 to 24, no employment records, no school enrollment, nothing. Meanwhile, Lena continued her routine, quiet, efficient, unremarkable. But the other staff started watching her more closely. During a routine appendectomy, she anticipated the surgeon's needs before he asked. Suction. She already had it ready. 10 blade, already in her hand. How did she know? The surgeon whispered to his resident. Another incident. A patient went into shock during recovery. Lena was the first to notice the subtle changes in his breathing. She called the code before the monitors even registered the problem. The patient survived. But the questions kept growing. Who is she really? What's she hiding? Late one night, janitor Miguel found her in the supply room. She was practicing suturing techniques on a piece of fabric, but her movements were different, faster, more aggressive, like she was working under pressure, under fire. "Miss Lena, you okay?" She startled, quickly hiding the fabric. "Yes, just practicing." Miguel noticed her hands were trembling, not from nervousness, from muscle memory, from memories that wouldn't leave her alone. Miguel had seen enough in his 60 years to recognize trauma when he saw it. My cousin, he came back from Vietnam like that. Hands that knew things they wished they could forget. Lena looked up at him sharply. Miguel just nodded and continued mopping. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones nobody sees. He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Miss Lena, whatever you've been through, you're using it to help people now. That counts for something." After he left, Lena sat alone in the supply room, staring at the fabric in her hands. She thought about the weight of secrets, about how the past follows you no matter how far you run. The whispers in the hospital grew louder. Nurses would point when she passed by. Residents would study her movements during procedures. Everyone had theories, but no one had answers. Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychiatrist who occasionally consulted in the ER, began observing Lena more closely. She noticed the way Lena's shoulders tensed when the trauma bay doors burst open, how she instinctively positioned herself with clear exits in view, the micro-expressions that flashed across her face when she heard certain sounds. Classic PTSD markers, Chen noted in her private observations, but also incredible functional adaptation. She's channeled her trauma into expertise. During a coffee break, Chen approached Dr. Hayes. "That nurse, Lena Kovacs, have you noticed anything unusual about her behavior patterns?" Hayes looked up from his charts. "What do you mean?" "Hypervigilance, startle responses, but also an almost supernatural ability to predict medical crises. It's like she's constantly scanning for threats. And in a hospital setting, those threats are medical emergencies." Hayes set down his coffee. "You think she has PTSD? I think she has something much more complex. Training that's been reinforced by extreme stress. The kind of conditioning you only see in military personnel or first responders who've seen heavy combat." That conversation planted another seed of suspicion in Hayes' mind. He began paying closer attention to Lena's behavioral patterns, the way she moved through the hospital like she was navigating a potential battlefield, always aware, always ready. Around Lena's left wrist was always tied a strip of faded olive green cloth. It looked like medical gauze, but older, battle-worn. It was a piece of personal bandage from a mission where she'd held pressure on a teammate's wound for 40 minutes straight, while under heavy gunfire. The truth began to unravel on a Thursday night. Dr. Hayes had been researching military medical units, classified operations, off-the-books missions. He found references to something called Kraken Unit, elite medical response team, frontline combat medics, the soldiers who saved lives where no backup existed. The unit was disbanded in 2019, all records classified, but Hayes had connections. A friend at the Pentagon owed him a favor. Kraken Unit? Jesus, Hayes, why are you asking about that? I think one of them might be working in my hospital. Impossible. Those records were sealed. Everyone was reassigned or discharged with new identities. Tell me about their training. They could perform surgery in the middle of a firefight, save lives while bombs were dropping. Their reflexes were inhuman. Hayes felt his pulse quicken. Friday morning, he confronted Lena directly. I need to speak with you, privately. In his office, he spread out photos on the desk. Military medical equipment, combat surgical techniques. I know who you are. Lena's face didn't change, but her breathing shifted, controlled, alert. I'm a nurse, Dr. Hayes. No, you're Sergeant Lena Kovacs, former Kraken Unit medic. She was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. How did you know? Your hands, your reflexes, the way you move under pressure. I've never seen anything like it in civilian medicine. Lena sat back in the chair. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, her guard dropped. Mission Iron Dusk, Afghanistan, 2018. Her voice was quiet but steady. My unit was ambushed during a medical evacuation. Roadside bomb took out our convoy. She showed him the scar on her arm. Our team leader caught shrapnel in his femoral artery, same injury as that officer 2 weeks ago. I held pressure on that wound for 37 minutes with my bare hands, while enemy fire was coming from 3 directions. The helicopter couldn't land. We had to wait. Hayes stared at her. 37 minutes? My hands cramped so badly I couldn't move them for hours afterward. But he lived. She touched the olive green cloth around her wrist. This was his field bandage. He gave it to me before they medevaced him out. The unit was classified. When it disbanded, they erased our service records, gave us new identities, told us to blend in. Why medicine? Hayes asked. Because I've seen what happens when medics aren't prepared, when they freeze under pressure. Her eyes met his. I'm not here for recognition, Dr. Hayes. I'm here so no medic will ever stand unprepared the way I once did. Hayes leaned forward. What do you mean? Before Kraken Unit, I was just a regular Army medic. First deployment, I choked. Couldn't save a 19-year-old kid who bled out from a leg wound. Same wound I saved that officer from. Same wound I learned to stop with my eyes closed. Every reflex you've seen, it's built on the memory of everyone I couldn't save fast enough. The room was silent. Hayes understood now. This wasn't just about medical skill. This was about redemption. About carrying the weight of those who didn't make it home. The other staff doesn't need to know, he said finally. Lena shook her head. They'll figure it out eventually. They always do. What will you do then? Same thing I've been doing. Save lives. Train others. Move on when necessary. Hayes watched her stand to leave. Lena, she turned back. That kid you mentioned, the one you couldn't save. What was his name? Her voice was barely a whisper. Danny Morrison, from Ohio. He wanted to be a teacher. She paused at the door. I carry his dog tags with that coin in my pocket. Every patient I save, it's for him too. The weight of that revelation hung in the air. Every life she'd touched, every technique she'd mastered, every sleepless night studying diagrams, all of it traced back to one moment of failure that had driven her to become extraordinary. That's why you never take credit, Hayes said, understanding finally dawning. Because you're not saving them, you're saving him, over and over again. Lena's hand touched the doorknob. Every heartbeat I preserve is one Danny never got to have. Every family that doesn't lose someone, it's the family his parents never got to be. Hayes leaned back in his chair. How many others know? About Danny? Nobody. About Crake and Unit? A few people suspect, but they can't prove anything. What happened to the rest of your unit? Lena paused. Some died in Iron Dusk. Others scattered when the program ended. We weren't supposed to stay in contact. But you all carry the same burden. Different burdens. Same training. We each found our own way to process what we'd seen. Hayes studied her face. The nightmares? Every night for the first 2 years. Now, maybe twice a week. She touched the olive cloth again. Some memories don't fade. They just learn to coexist. Is that why you work night shifts? Fewer people around? Partially. But also because that's when the worst cases come in. Car accidents, overdoses, domestic violence. The chaos reminds me why I'm here. Hayes stood up, walking to his window. The hospital board wants to recognize your actions last week. Public ceremony. Local news coverage. I'll resign first. Her voice was firm. I didn't come here for recognition. I came here to disappear. But your skills will transfer to every person I train. That's how it's supposed to work. What about justice for what you've been through? For what you've sacrificed? Lena opened the door. Justice isn't a medal or a ceremony, Dr. Hayes. Justice is making sure the next Danny Morrison doesn't die alone. She paused in the doorway. In Kraken Unit, we had a saying, the dead don't need monuments, the living need teachers. Her eyes met his one final time. I'm not here to be remembered. I'm here to make sure others don't forget what really matters. The door closed softly behind her. Hayes remained standing at his window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Somewhere out there, other former Kraken Unit members were living quiet lives, carrying their own versions of Danny Morrison, using their trauma to heal others. He thought about the bureaucracy of the hospital, the politics, the endless meetings about efficiency and profit margins. Then he thought about Lena working night shifts, training residents, saving lives without asking for anything in return. In that moment, he realized he was witnessing something rare, true service, the kind that doesn't seek reward because the work itself is the reward. She left Hayes sitting in his office, staring at the photos of military medical equipment. Outside his window, the hospital continued its never-ending mission of healing, but now he saw it differently. Every doctor, every nurse, every life saved. They were all part of something bigger, a chain of redemption that stretched back to battlefields most people would never see. Type I owe a debt if you've ever been saved by someone whose name was never recorded, someone who disappeared back into shadows after giving you life. Word spread quietly through the hospital. Not gossip, respect. She's not just a nurse. Did you hear what she did in the war? 37 minutes under fire. But Lena didn't want the attention. She refused interviews, declined commendations. She just continued working. However, something had changed. A small group of young residents started approaching her during breaks. Could you teach us what you know? How do you stay calm when everything's chaos? Show us those techniques. Lena would smile quietly and agree to help. In empty conference rooms after shifts, she began informal training sessions, not just medical procedures, mental preparation. You don't stay steady, she would tell them. You just decide who deserves one more heartbeat, and you move faster than your fear. She taught them to work with trembling hands, to think clearly while alarm screamed, to find calm in the center of crisis. In combat, you have seconds to decide. In surgery, you have minutes. Same principles apply. Focus on what you can control. Ignore everything else. Dr. Richards, the resident who'd struggled with the arterial clamp, became one of her most dedicated students. Before, I would panic at the sight of blood, he admitted. Now I channel that adrenaline. Within months, the entire emergency department noticed changes. Response times improved, fewer mistakes under pressure, better patient outcomes. But Lena remained in the background. No promotions, no recognition, no newspaper articles, just quiet competence. One evening, a new note appeared on the ER bulletin board. Reflexes aren't born, They're carved where life and death wrestle. LK. Dr. Hayes found himself watching her work with new appreciation. She'd saved more lives than anyone realized, not just as a combat medic, but as a teacher. Every doctor she trained would go on to save others. Her impact multiplied exponentially. This is what real heroism looks like, he thought. Not seeking glory, just passing on the gift. During a particularly difficult night shift, a mass casualty event came in. Multiple trauma patients, all hands needed. Lena moved through the chaos like water, guiding, supporting, teaching. Dr. Chen, remember what we practiced. Breathe first, then assess. Nurse Williams, you've got this. Trust your training. Dr. Martinez, pressure here, then clamp, just like we showed you. Every person she touched performed better, not because of her hands, but because of her presence. The shift ended with 0 preventable deaths. As the team cleaned up, Dr. Richards approached her. We couldn't have done this without you. Lena shook her head. You did it yourselves. I just reminded you what you already knew. But everyone understood the truth. She had given them something invaluable, not just technique, confidence, the belief that they could handle anything. The hospital had become something more than a medical facility. It was a training ground for heroes, a place where Lena's legacy lived on in every steady hand, every calm voice, every life saved by someone she'd taught. And in the quiet moments between emergencies, when the halls were peaceful and the monitors beeped steadily, Lena would touch the coin in her pocket and whisper a name, Danny Morrison, because every technique she taught, every life she saved, every moment of crisis she turned into triumph, it all traced back to a promise she'd made to a boy who never came home. Type I will live kindly if you believe every reflex that saves a life starts with a compassionate heart. Lena Kovacs isn't a legend in medical textbooks, but her hands have saved more lives than any statistic could record. The lesson here runs deeper than medical training. Society often judges people by credentials, by resumes, by what's written on paper. But sometimes, the most valuable experience can't be documented. A simple nurse might be a former combat medic who once held death at bay in the middle of a war zone. The quiet person in the corner might carry wisdom that no classroom could teach. Lena's story reminds us of an important truth. There are heroes who choose silence. There are hands that shake with memory, but when needed, they move faster than thought. The most profound impact often happens without recognition. Every doctor Lena trained became better at saving lives. Every technique she shared prevented future deaths. Every moment of calm she provided in crisis rippled outward. This is how real change happens, not through headlines or awards, through one person teaching another. Knowledge passed quietly from experience to potential, from scars to healing. Think about the people in your life who've helped you become better. Were they famous? Probably not. Were they credited? Unlikely. But they were there when it mattered. They shared what they knew without asking for anything in return. Lena represents all of those quiet heroes. The teachers who stay late to help struggling students. The coworkers who share their expertise freely. The strangers who offer help in moments of crisis. Their names might not be remembered, but their impact lives on. In every life they touch, in every skill they pass along, in every moment when someone else chooses to help because they learned it was possible. Lena could have kept her experience hidden forever. She could have let her past stay buried. Instead, she chose to use her pain to prevent others' pain. Her trauma became their training. Her scars became their strength. This is the ultimate lesson. Our worst experiences can become our greatest gifts if we're willing to share them. The question isn't whether you've suffered enough to help others. The question is, will you let your experience become wisdom for someone else? Will you be the quiet hero who changes everything without needing credit? Every person reading this has knowledge that could help someone else. Skills learned through hardship, wisdom earned through failure, experience that could prevent others from making the same mistakes. The choice is simple. Keep it to yourself or pass it on. Be invisible or be influential. Hide your scars or let them become someone else's strength. Lena chose to share, to teach, to transform her pain into purpose. In doing so, she created a legacy that will outlive any medal or recognition. Because the best heroes aren't the ones we remember. They're the ones who make sure we never forget what really matters.
If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to The Veteran's Story. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.